right? If it takes that long and they lost 4 of them, right? That's about, I mean, obviously maybe they're making them at the same time, but let's just say they're not, one at a time. 8 years worth of building carriers gone in Midway. That's going to set back Japan a lot. That's kind of why this is a turning point, right? Initially, they wanted to draw the U.S. fleet out, and they wanted to destroy the U.S. fleet. And really what happened was kind of the opposite, right? We lost a carrier and a destroyer and like 100 and something airplanes. They lost hundreds of planes, 4 carriers, and a destroyer. We did some good damage. So we win at Midway, right? We're able to kind of cripple their Navy at that point, taking out 4 carriers. And so now this is kind of the turning point where the U.S. and the Allies are finally on, now we're pushing and we're on the offensive now. We're going to push out of Australia into those lower islands and work our way up. So Japan targets Midway, U.S. Air Base. So let's do Battle of Midway. Cripples Japan's fleet. Turning point of war. If there's anything you remember from the Battle of Midway, it's that is the turning point for the U.S., turning point for the Allies. So now we are going to look at General MacArthur. So with high morale, with victory at Midway, the Allies took the offensive. With war in the Pacific involved vast distances. Japanese troops had dug in on hundreds of islands across the ocean. So now we have General Douglas MacArthur, the commander of the Allied land forces in the Pacific, developed a plan to handle this problem. So MacArthur believed that storming each island would be a long and costly effort, right? Each island, strongholds that Japan has, heavily built up, defended very well. You know, there's traps everywhere. It's just a well-defended, these islands. So MacArthur believed that that would cost a lot of lives, that would cost a lot of equipment, and he came up with this better plan where instead he wanted to island hop past Japanese strongholds. So his strategy was to capture weaker Japanese-controlled islands, then use these bases to seize islands closer to Japan. You know, hence hopping from island to island, closer and closer to Japan, right? You're setting up new bases, so as you keep going, they're able to replenish those new bases that are Allied controlled, right? And they can launch their own attacks from them, right? So they're kind of working their way in through the Pacific, one island at a time. Not necessarily trying to go for like the biggest strongholds, but going after the weaker ones so that, you know, the more you take over, the more, like the greater impact it is overall on the grand scheme of the war. So let's write down General MacArthur. MacArthur. Island hopping. And someone from this table right here, close to Bodie, what is island hopping? What is the strategy just at its core?
It's like going from island to island with a bunch of troops from boat to boat, just like taking over one by one.
Okay, so what islands are they targeting? Weak ones. So why attack the weak ones rather than going for the big ones first? Why attack the weak ones after going for the big ones first? Still over here. You know, Jackson, help him out.
It's like cut off their supply lines.
Yeah.
They can get closer and closer to the mainland, and they have no supply line. And yeah.
Right. So also remember that they're going after the weaker islands. They don't want to go for the big stronghold ones. They're going for the weaker islands first. So General MacArthur, island hopping. Let's put down weaker islands. And this will equal new bases with an arrow pointing to Japan, right? maybe if you want to write it out into words, controlling weaker islands for new bases, progressively pushing toward Japan. But this is how I'm going to write it, just to save space on the board. Island hopping is going for weaker islands, making them into your new bases, right? You're seizing their bases, and you are using them to slowly and, progressively push your way to Japan. So in the process, the Allies would cut off supply lines needed to keep the Japanese Navy afloat. Kind of like what Jackson said, right? The more you take of theirs, the less they have of room to even move supplies, right? Before they had all these islands, now they're gonna have to maneuver around you because you take them over. So now we're going to look at the first example of island hopping where we're gonna see it go into play. So MacArthur's first target soon presented itself. U.S. military leaders learned that the Japanese were building a huge air base on the island of Guadalcanal in the Solomon Islands. The Allies had to strike fast before the base was completed and became another Japanese stronghold. At dawn on August 7th, 1942, several thousand Marines with the Australian support landed on Guadalcanal and the neighboring island of Tulagi. So let's go August of 42. U.S. launch attack on Guadalcanal. One word, Guadalcanal. Let's put in parentheses Japanese stronghold that they're going to build, right? They were building a huge air base, so Japanese air base. They wanted to take it out before it was completed, kind of like what they did to us in Wake Island, right? Wake Island was a half-built submarine base, half-built airfield. So we're going to try to do it in Guadalcanal. So the Marines had little trouble seizing Guadalcanal airfield, but the battle for control of the island turned into a savage struggle as both sides poured in fresh troops. In February of 43, after 6 months of fighting on land and sea, the Battle of Guadalcanal finally ended. After losing more than 24,000 of their 36,000 force, it came to be called the Island of Death. Yeah.
There's actually a show about this island. It's called the Pacific.
Yeah, Pacific.
It's really good. It's like the first episode. It's
Yeah.
just like bloody, but it's really good.
Yeah, it's like the Pacific. It's the Pacific version of Band of Brothers, right? That's a good example. It's kind of like what D-Day looked like in Europe, if you've ever seen it, where we had the landing craft boats kind of launching into the beach and dropping people off. That's what this looks like, right? They've got the same landing craft going into Guadalcanal. They were able to take the airfield really quick, but it took 6 months for them to even control the island, right? So let's do Battle of Guadalcanal.
Like the Japanese would they do some terrible stuff that mutilate dead American bodies and hang them on trees and cut off their arms and legs.
Yeah, pretty horrific stuff happened in the Pacific where they would even rig dead bodies with traps and explosives and set them off as traps. We're actually going to read a quote from a veteran from there that kind of describes what it was like. So, Battle of Guadalcanal, take airfield, 6 months to control island. Able to take the airfield quick, but it takes 6 months to actually get control of the island in its entirety, right? Subnote, 24,000 of the 36,000 killed. 2/3 of your invasion force is killed in taking Guadalcanal, thus calling it Island of Death. So let's do an arrow from the casualties, quotations, Island of Death. So let's have Finn, you want to read this quote for us?
This little starting at hell?
Yeah, so it's from Ralph Martin, who was at Guadalcanal.
Hell was red puke, furry spiders as big as your fist, enormous rats and bats everywhere, and rivers with wading crocodiles. Hell was the sour, foul smells of the squishy jungle humidity that rotted a body within hours. Hell was an enemy so fanatic fanatic that it used its own dead as booby traps.
Yeah. So we kind of talked about it yesterday in comparison with Russia, where in Russia they were fighting against the elements as well, right? The harsh winters, weather conditions. In the Japan, you're fighting against the elements as well. These rivers that you're maybe crossing in order to get across jungles might be filled with crocodiles. I don't know if you guys have ever heard. It didn't happen here. It happened in Myanmar in, I think it was 44 or 45 toward the end of the war. But the biggest massacre of animals to humans was at the Ramri River, where in the middle of the night, the Allies attacked the Japanese and pushed them out, and they had to retreat across a river. And in that area, the Japanese, you know, they staged there for a long time, so they were hunting food, right? I mean, naturally so. And so that was limiting the food for the crocodiles. And these are massive, like, saltwater crocs. So they're like 16 to 20 feet. Like, these things are dinosaurs. And so they had to retreat across this river, and in one night, 1,000 Japanese soldiers were killed by crocodiles in the river, which is just insane. Like, that is insane to even think about. So, I mean, right here, red furry spiders as big as your fist, rats and bats carry disease. These spiders are probably venomous, right? Massive crocodiles. So everything that could go wrong would go wrong, right? In the Pacific. Horrible stuff. So, and they're rigging the bodies of whoever they can with explosives, right? Everywhere is a trap. It could go horribly wrong. So that's just an example of how south things could go really quick in the Pacific. If we have time, we'll do an exit ticket. Yesterday they did one where you give an explanation of whether you would have rather fought in Russia or in the Pacific, whether you fought in a harsh winter or if you fought in this jungle environment with crocodiles and spiders. I don't know. Frostbite would suck, but I hate spiders, so that's a pretty tough one. But we are going to get into some questions. So on your whiteboards, kind of how we did it that one time, each group, we'll go one question at a time, and then we'll talk it over as a class. We'll probably have about 30 to a minute, right? 30 seconds to a minute per question. So in your table groups, one question, first one, who led a bombing raid against Japan as retaliation for Pearl Harbor?
What's his name? Doolittle. Doolittle. I don't know his first name.
Who led a bombing raid against Japan?
Is it the guy that doesn't talk to animals?
The specific general. We know it's the U.S., so what general? Or commander, I should say. He wasn't a general. Give you like 20 more seconds. All I need is the name. Almost. We'll throw it back.
It's like right at the start.
It was the first thing we talked about. It was the first slides we took notes from. See if we can get it. All right. I'll give you 15 more seconds.
That first one.
Two.
2 O's. Oh.
All right, raise them up. What do we got? Do late.
They tried. These two were trying.
Almost.
There was
Do little, do little, do little, do little, do little, do little, do little. Awesome. Okay. Yep. Remember, first part of our slides. April 42, Doolittle bombs Tokyo. Shows that Japan is vulnerable. Do you have a question or are you stretching? You're good. You can stretch, but look like a raise hand. Okay, second one. What naval battle was fought entirely using aircraft? Naval battle entirely using aircraft.
There's two, but this was like the first one.
Yeah, I know.
take like yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of us have had World War II, but also like a lot of friends. That's where we get a lot of our friends. Which is kind of scary to think of because they use experiments. They kind of progress with that, so it's like a sad reality of modern medicine. A lot of them are kind of messed up. All right, we got it. Raise them up. Coral C, Coral C, Coral C, Coral C, Coral C, Coral C. Awesome. Yep, Battle of Coral Sea, right? Launched from aircraft carriers. It was pushing them away from New Guinea, right? So number 3, what battle was the official turning point for the Allies in the Pacific?
Said I knew it. I need a second.
Official turning point. Ryan. Wake up, Ryan. Too much siege,
I got it right away, sorry.
Too much siege.
Too much band.
Oh, that's good, Ryan.
Then I got a 4-day trip.
Oh, that's what you got.
Cali was awesome.
Oh, what
Cali
part?
on the coast. Eureka?
Yeah.
That's sweet.
Really nice.
Nice.
Sunny too. It's like
I
on the
bet.
beach. It's nice.
Yeah. All right, raise them up. Naval battle, or sorry, no, turning point for the Pacific. Midway, 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 midway. Sweet. All right, the 4th question. What was General MacArthur's strategy for the Pacific? What was the strategy? So give the name or that phrase of the strategy, and then try to explain it. You don't have to necessarily write an essay on these. Write like a 4 to 5 word thing. Kind of summarize it. Was it like a band competition?
Nah, it was
That's sweet. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you know what rain?
Was that supposed to be a joke? That's just a fun fact.
What was the strategy called and what did it look like?
Keep your mouth closed. Don't look really sad in your mouth. Keep your mouth closed.
All right, raise them up. Island hopping, take Japan, weaker islands. Island hopping. What does it say?
No.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, targeting small islands. Island hopping, take control of weaker islands. Island hopping, get closer to Japan. Island hopping. Going island to island. Right on. Awesome. Yep. Island hopping. If you can remember that island hopping is progressively they're hopping from island to island, getting closer to Japan. That's all you really need to know. Island hopping. That's how they did it. And the last question. What island within the Solomon Islands was MacArthur's first target? What island within the Solomon Islands was MacArthur's first target?
Michael, you good, Michael?
Where? Why are you guys so tired?
It's just become harder. Coming back from like a startup trip, and then I'm straight like, because I was up at like 6 and then coming up at like waking up at 6, getting back in the swing of school is just
Yeah.
not fun.
It's somewhat in a car, I think.
All right, raise them up. Guadalcanal, 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 Guadalcanal. I'm assuming you guys have Guadalcanal.
Yeah.
Guadalcanal. Awesome. All right. So that's it for these first round of questions. We'll probably won't have time to get to the second round, so we'll start the next day with that.
Why are you trying to do that, bro?
But